The Chicago night hummed with a restless pulse. Its neon lights flickering over the industrial district like a heartbeat struggling to hold on. Mike's auto repair stood on a gritty corner of Cicero Avenue. Its brick facade weathered by decades of wind and work. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of motor oil, rust, and memories. Tools hung on pegboards, their handles worn smooth by hands that had built a legacy. A faded sign above the door read, "Tom's Auto," though everyone in the neighborhood knew it as Mike's now. At 24, Mike was a lean figure with grease-stained hands. And eyes that carried a weight far older than his years. His father, Big Tom, the shop's heart and soul, lay in a hospital bed across town. Tethered to machines that beeped with grim uncertainty. The shop was all Mike had left. A fragile tether to his father's dream. Now drowning in bills and fading hope. Mike worked alone tonight. Hunched over the engine of a battered '78 Chevy Impala. Its rusted frame a mirror of his own exhaustion. The radio played low. A scratchy blues tune that reminded him of his dad's laughter. Back when the shop was alive with customers and stories. Big Tom had taught him everything. How to rebuild a carburetor. How to listen to an engine's secrets. How to stand tall when the world tried to break you. "This shop's our blood, Mikey," he'd said. His voice rough but warm. "It's who we are. Don't let anyone take it." Now, with Tom fighting for his life, Mike felt the weight of those words like a stone in his chest. The hospital bills were piling up. And the shop's ledger was a sea of red. He tightened a bolt. His knuckles white. Refusing to let despair win. The glass door slammed open with a force that shook the walls. Shattering the quiet. Mike's wrench slipped. Clanging against the concrete floor. The sound swallowed by his racing pulse. In the doorway stood Dario. A hulking figure whose name was a curse whispered in the south side's shadows. His shaved head gleamed under the fluorescent lights. And his cold, predatory eyes locked onto Mike. Two lackeys flanked him. Their faces blank but their hands twitching near their jackets. Ready for trouble. The shop's three workers. Joey, a wiry kid barely out of high school. Luis, a quiet family man. And Old Man Carter, who'd been wrenching since the Nixon era. Froze at their stations. Tools clattered to the floor, forgotten. They knew Dario's reputation. Businesses crumbled under his demands. Their owners left broken or worse. "You Mike?" Dario's voice was a low growl, heavy with menace. He didn't wait for an answer. Stepping into the shop like he owned it. "Heard your old man's not long for this world. Tough break. This shop's yours now, huh? Well, it's gonna work for me. My crew's cars need fixing. You do it free. Or things get messy." Mike straightened. Wiping his hands on a rag, his jaw tight. His dad's voice echoed in his mind, steady and unyielding. Fear clawed at him. Dario wasn't just a bully, he was a force of destruction. A man who'd left a trail of ruined dreams across the neighborhood. Mike thought of the diner on 47th Street. Now a charred skeleton after its owner crossed Dario. But he also thought of his dad. The hospital room. The shop's flickering sign. Giving in meant losing everything. "No deal," Mike said. His voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. "You want work done. You pay like everyone else." Dario's smirk vanished. His eyes narrowing to slits. "You got nerve, kid. But nerve don't change reality. You're gonna wish you'd listened." He stepped closer. His shadow swallowing Mike. His presence suffocating. The workers backed away, their fear a tangible weight. Joey whispered, "Mike, don't do this," his voice cracking. Luis stared at the floor, clutching a wrench like a lifeline. Carter muttered a prayer, his hands trembling. Mike stood his ground. His heart pounding but his resolve ironclad. This was his father's shop, their legacy. He wouldn't let it fall. The air crackled with tension, a storm about to break. Dario's lackeys moved forward, their postures coiled. Ready to enforce their boss's will. Mike gripped his wrench tighter. Prepared to fight, even if it meant going down swinging. But before the first blow could land, a new sound cut through. A deliberate click of boots on pavement, slow and purposeful. All eyes turned to the doorway. A man stood there, silhouetted against the streetlights. His presence commanding the room like a blade slicing through fog. Jason Statham. Lean, hard-edged. His face carved from stone. His eyes burned with a quiet, dangerous intensity. No one knew why he was there. A drifter passing through, a protector drawn by instinct. Or something else entirely. But his reputation preceded him. A man who faced trouble head-on and left it in the dust. Got a problem here? Jason's voice was calm, almost conversational. But it carried a weight that made Dario's men hesitate. Dario turned, sizing up the newcomer with a sneer. This ain't your fight, stranger. Walk away while you still can. Jason stepped into the light, his leather jacket creaking softly. I don't like bullies, he said, his gaze locked on Dario. And I don't like you scaring the kid. Back off. Now. The shop went silent. The air thick with anticipation. Like the moment before a fuse ignites. Dario laughed. A cold, hollow sound that echoed off the walls. You think you're tough, he said, nodding to his lackeys. Show him what happens to heroes. The chaos erupted in a heartbeat. One lackey lunged, swinging a heavy fist. But Jason was a blur of motion. He sidestepped, grabbing the man's arm and twisting it. Sending him stumbling into a stack of tires. With a crash that shook the shop. The second lackey charged, brandishing a metal pipe. But Jason ducked under the swing. Delivering a swift kick to the man's knee. The pipe clattered to the floor as the lackey collapsed. Groaning but unharmed. The action was fast, precise, and controlled. No blood, no broken bones. Just a display of skill that left no room for doubt. Dario roared, his pride wounded. And rushed Jason, his massive frame like a bull charging. Mike didn't hesitate. He grabbed his wrench, swinging it at Dario's shoulder. The impact forcing the thug to stagger. Stay away from my shop. Mike shouted, his voice raw with defiance. He thought of his dad. The hospital bed. The years of grease and grit that built this place. He swung again. The wrench clanging against a workbench as Dario dodged. His eyes blazing with fury. Jason didn't flinch. He grabbed Dario by the collar. Using the thug's momentum to shove him against the Chevy's hood with a thud. You're done, Jason said. His voice low and final. Like a judge passing sentence. Dario struggled, his fists flailing. But Jason was relentless, pinning him with a knee to the chest. Mike, panting, grabbed a coil of rope from a nearby shelf. Tossing it to Jason. With swift, practiced movements. Jason bound Dario's hands, securing him to a steel beam. The lackeys, dazed and outmatched, stayed down. Their fight gone. The workers watched, wide-eyed. Their fear giving way to awe. Joey let out a shaky laugh, breaking the silence. Luis unclenched his fists, relief washing over him. Carter, his prayer forgotten. Nodded at Mike, a spark of pride in his old eyes. Sirens wailed in the distance. Red and blue lights flashing through the grimy windows. Someone, likely Carter, with his knack for staying one step ahead, had called the cops. Jason stood, brushing dust from his jacket, his expression unreadable. He turned to Mike, his steely gaze softening just a fraction. "You got heart, kid," he said, a faint smile breaking through. "Your dad raised you right. This shop's worth fighting for." Mike nodded, his chest heaving, adrenaline still coursing through him. His jaw ached from clenching it, but he felt alive, unbreakable. "Why'd you help me?" he asked, his voice hoarse. Jason's eyes flicked to a faded photo on the wall. Big Tom and a young Mike, standing in front of the shop. Their smiles bright against the faded paint. "I had a family once," Jason said. His voice quiet but heavy. "A place like this. I know what it means to hold on." He paused, then added. "You reminded me of that." The sirens grew louder, the police closing in. Jason gave Mike a final nod. "Hold the line, kid," he said. Then slipped out the door, vanishing into the Chicago night like a shadow. Mike watched him go. A mix of gratitude and wonder settling in his chest. He didn't know where Jason came from or where he was headed. But in that moment, he'd been exactly what Mike needed. The police stormed in minutes later, their boots heavy on the concrete. They cuffed Dario and his lackeys, who offered no resistance. Their defiance broken. The workers recounted the story in a rush, their voices overlapping. Joey's nervous chatter, Luis's quiet relief, Carter's gruff pride. Mike stood in the center of the shop, the wrench still in his hand, its weight grounding him. He looked around at the tools, the engines, the walls that held his father's dreams. The shop was battered but standing. Just like him. He thought of Big Tom, alone in that sterile hospital room, fighting a battle Mike couldn't see. The bills loomed like a storm cloud. And Dario's crew might still come back, angrier than before. But Mike felt something new. A fire in his gut. A certainty that he could carry this burden. He wasn't just Big Tom's son anymore. He was the man who'd stood his ground. Across town, in the quiet of a hospital room, Big Tom stirred. His eyes fluttered open. Weak but alive. He didn't know what had happened at the shop. But he felt it. A spark in his son, burning brighter than ever. The machines beeped steadily. And for the first time in weeks, Tom's lips curved into a faint smile. The shop would stand. And so would Mike.